On the night of May 19th, 2026, inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse, with cameras rolling on national television, Caitlin Clark walked toward the free throw line. And in that moment, her own head coach reached out from the sideline and grabbed her by the arm. Clark didn't pause. She didn't look back politely. She ripped her hand away, right there, on live television, in front of the entire country. That moment is going to live rent-free in the minds of every WNBA fan, every sports analyst, and every executive in women's basketball for a very long time. Not because it was loud, not because anyone threw a punch or screamed across the court, but because of what it represented, because of what happened 12 hours before that grab, and because of what's coming 5 nights after it. When you line up the dates, when you put the full picture together, what you're looking at isn't just a sideline disagreement between a player and a coach. What you're looking at is a franchise that is being pulled in 2 completely opposite directions, and the city of Indianapolis already decided which direction it's going. The Indiana fever just hasn't caught up yet, and the clock is ticking. Tuesday morning, May 19th, 2026, same day as the grab, same city, different world. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway, one of the most storied venues in the history of American sport, walked up to a microphone and announced that Caitlin Clark would serve as the Grand Marshal of the 110th Indianapolis 500. And if you don't understand what that means, let's be very clear about what that role actually is. The Grand Marshal of the Indianapolis 500 doesn't just wave a flag and smile for the cameras. The Grand Marshal stands on the victory podium in front of the largest single-day sporting event on the face of the earth and delivers the most quoted command in motorsport history. "Drivers, start your engines." That's it. That's the moment. And the list of people Indianapolis has trusted with that microphone over the decades reads like a Hall of Fame highlight reel. Larry Bird, Reggie Miller, Peyton Manning, Derek Jeter, Alex Rodriguez, and twice, not once, but twice, Tamika Catchings, the greatest player in Indiana Fever history, was handed that exact same role. Those aren't random names, those are icons. Those are the people that the city of Indianapolis has looked at and said, this person represents us. This person is what we stand for. And on the morning of May 19th, 2026, Indianapolis looked at a 23-year-old in her second professional season and said, she's next. The city put Caitlin Clark in that company before she's even hit her prime, before she's won a championship, before she's finished building whatever it is she's building. Indianapolis made a statement in the morning that couldn't have been clearer. And then, 12 hours later, her own head coach grabbed her by the arm on national television. Same day, same city, 2 completely different messages. Now here's where things get uncomfortable, because if you've seen the footage, and at this point hundreds of thousands of people have, you already know that what happened on that sideline wasn't a coaching tap. It wasn't a friendly grab to get her attention before a big moment. Caitlin Clark was walking toward the free throw line. The game was being broadcast nationally, and Stephanie White reached out from the sideline and grabbed her by the arm. Clark pulled her hand back immediately. No hesitation, no second thought, and the camera caught every single second of it. But here's the detail that gets lost in the initial shock of watching it. Look at Stephanie White's face the moment it happens. That's not the expression of a coach who just gave a quick instruction and got brushed off. That's not irritation. That's not confusion. That's the face of someone who just realized in real time that her player said no to her, on camera, in front of a national audience, with nowhere to look and nowhere to go. That expression tells you everything the words didn't. Now, Indiana basketball has a very specific and very uncomfortable relationship with the idea of a coach putting hands on a player. You don't have to go very far back to find it. In 1997, the last time an Indiana basketball coach put hands on a player on camera, the fallout didn't arrive overnight, but it arrived. It took a few years, but the story didn't go away.
And we are absolutely not comparing Stephanie White to that coach. That's not the point. The point is that Indiana, as a basketball state, as a culture, as a fan base, has a memory. Indiana remembers what that looks like. Indiana remembers what it costs. But here's the thing, Stephanie White isn't the real story here. She's the most visible part of it. She's what everyone's looking at. But 2 rows behind the Indiana Fever bench, someone else was watching the whole thing unfold, and she didn't move from her seat.
Scan the wide shot from that night. Not the close-up on Clark, not the reaction shot on White. Go wide. 2 rows behind the Indiana Fever bench. Kelly Krakoff is sitting there. Right next to her, Amber Cox, the president of basketball and business operations for the Indiana Fever, and the general manager of the Indiana Fever, sitting side by side in the stands, watching their head coach grab their franchise player on national television. Krakoff runs the entire basketball operation. She sets the direction, approves the hires, shapes the culture of the organization from the top down. Cox handles the day-to-day execution of everything underneath that. Together, they are the architecture of this franchise, and the architecture was in the building. Krakoff hired Stephanie White in November of 2024. Krakoff approved the offensive system White installed. Krakoff approved the staff that surrounds her on the bench every single night. Every decision that led to that sideline moment, every layer of the organization that produced the coach who grabbed Caitlin Clark's arm runs back through Kelly Krakoff. And on Tuesday night, Kelly Krakoff sat in those stands, watched it happen from 2 rows up, and didn't move. That's not an oversight. That's not bad timing. When the architect of a franchise watches her own design malfunction in front of the entire country, and her response is stillness, that stillness is itself a statement. The question is what exactly it's saying, and to answer that, you have to go back, way back. Because this story didn't start on May 19, 2026. It started on December 15, 1999. And it started with Kelly Krakoff. Long before Caitlin Clark was drafted, long before the $78 million training facility, long before any of this, Kelly Krakoff made the very first player transaction of her career as Indiana Fever general manager. It was December 15, 1999. The Fever hadn't played a single regular season game yet. The franchise was brand new, and Krakoff was already making moves. Indiana drafted Sandy Brondello in the expansion draft, then traded her, sent Brondello to the Miami Soul in exchange for Stephanie White. That trade, Brondello for White, was Krakoff's opening move, the first domino she ever tipped as the person running this franchise. And 26 years later, on the night of May 19, 2026, the woman she acquired in that very first trade grabbed the arm of the player the Indiana Fever signed to the largest contract in the history of women's basketball. Let that sit for a second. But here's where the 1999 trade gets even more layered, because Sandy Brondello, the player Krakoff traded away, is right now building the Toronto Tempo from the ground up. The Tempo enters the WNBA next season. Brondello is constructing a roster from scratch around her system and her style of play, with Olaf Lang running the front office beside her. The franchise is new. The foundation is being poured. And if you go into the comments section under any Caitlin Clark video posted in the last 24 hours, the name you keep seeing isn't a WNBA rival city. It's not Chicago. It's not New York. It's Toronto. Fans aren't whispering about a trade anymore. They're openly mapping out how it would happen. They're asking what the deal would look like. They're already imagining Caitlin Clark in a Tempo jersey. Kelly Krakoff made one trade in 1999. That trade produced 2 franchise trajectories. One of them is the franchise that grabbed Caitlin Clark's arm. The other one is the franchise her own fans are begging her to play for. 26 years. One decision, 2 completely different outcomes. And the wildest part of all of it, the tension between those 2 outcomes is still playing out right now in real time in 2026.
There's something in this story that hasn't gotten enough attention, and it deserves its own moment. Caitlin Clark has a documented back injury. It's not a rumor, it's not speculation. She's missed time for it. The training staff knows. Stephanie White knows. Kelly Krakoff knows. The medical situation surrounding their franchise player is not a mystery inside that building. And here's the thing about back injuries in professional athletes. You don't grab someone with a back injury. Not on the street, not in practice, and absolutely not on national television at the free throw line during a game. The grab itself would have been a bad look regardless of context. The fact that Caitlin Clark has a documented back condition makes it worse. Not just optics worse, medically worse. The kind of worse that gets lawyers involved if anything had gone wrong. But the reason this part of the story is so specifically damning for the Indiana Fever organization is this: they've been here before. They have a full playbook for exactly this situation. They wrote it themselves.
In 2015, Tamika Catchings, the greatest player in Indiana Fever history, was playing through a nagging back injury in what would turn out to be her final season. The Indiana Fever organization built a complete protocol around protecting her. A maximum of 26 minutes per game, a 19% reduction in her regular season load, a 49% reduction in her postseason minutes. The public message was simple and consistent: we are protecting her back. The protocol worked. Catchings got to finish her career on her own terms. She went out the way a legend should go out. And the head coach of the Indiana Fever, who implemented that protocol in 2015, who personally designed the way the organization protected Tamika Catchings through her back injury, was Stephanie White. The same Stephanie White who reached out and grabbed Caitlin Clark by the arm on May 19, 2026. She knew how to do it. She did it before. She built the framework herself. She chose not to use it this time. That's not ignorance. That's a choice. And that choice was made by someone who had every reason in the world to know better. The city of Indianapolis, meanwhile, has not forgotten what it means to protect greatness in this state. The same Indianapolis Motor Speedway that gave Tamika Catchings the Grand Marshal microphone twice just gave it to Caitlin Clark. The city sees the through line, even if the franchise doesn't. Last September, 8 months ago, the Indiana Fever broke ground on a brand new sports performance center. Price tag $78 million. Kelly Krakoff stood at the groundbreaking and told the world this facility would set a new standard for women's sports. Aaliyah Boston stood up and said she couldn't wait to call the building home. The numbers are legitimately impressive. 108,000 square feet, 3 stories, the largest training facility in WNBA history. It opens before the 2027 season. The Indiana Fever can spend $78 million on a building. They can spend it confidently, publicly, and with a press release. They can invite cameras to the groundbreaking and talk about setting standards and raising bars and leading the league. They can do all of that. And then, on a Tuesday night in May 2026, they cannot find 3 seconds of discipline to keep their head coach's hands off the most marketable player in the history of women's basketball. The gap between those two realities is the Indiana Fever's problem right now. Not the gap between their record and their ceiling, not the gap between their roster and a championship. The gap between what they say they are and what the cameras keep showing everyone they actually are. $78 million buys you a building. It doesn't buy you credibility. It doesn't buy you trust. And it absolutely does not buy back the moment that footage went viral. The building opens in 2027. The question nobody inside that organization seems to be asking loudly enough is whether Caitlin Clark will still be there to walk through the front door. Sunday, May 24, 2026, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, 12:29 p.m. Eastern Time. Caitlin Clark walks to the victory podium. 350,000 people packed into the stands, 100 million more watching at home on Fox, and she delivers the command: "Drivers, start your engines." The
The crowd responds the way only Indianapolis crowds respond to something like that, like the sound itself is alive. That microphone belongs to her now, not loaned, not borrowed, not given as a favor by a sponsorship team looking for impressions. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway chose her for this. The same podium Tamika Catchings stood on, the same command Larry Bird gave, the same tradition Reggie Miller was part of. Caitlin Clark, 23 years old, second professional season, standing in front of 110 years of motorsport history and speaking to it all. And the Indiana Fever, Kelly Krakoff, Amber Cox, Stephanie White, Herb Simon, the entire organization had exactly 5 nights between the grab on Tuesday and that podium moment on Sunday to figure out what they were going to do about the fact that the city of Indianapolis had already made its decision. Indianapolis decided who Caitlin Clark is. Indianapolis decided what she represents. Indianapolis put her in the company of the greatest names this state has ever produced and handed her a microphone in front of the world.
The Fever don't get a vote on that. The city moved without them. What the Fever do get a vote on is what comes next. They get to decide how they respond to what happened on Tuesday night. They get to decide whether the organization that grabbed her and the organization that's building a $78 million monument to women's sports can actually be the same franchise that deserves to keep her. They get to decide whether a 5-night deadline shakes something loose in that building or whether it hardens the walls around a culture that's clearly struggling. Because the fans have already started asking the question the Fever should be terrified of. Not whether Caitlin Clark should go somewhere else. They're past that. They're asking where. And the answer they keep landing on, in the comments, in the forums, in the group chats, is the franchise built by the player Kelly Krakoff traded away 26 years ago. Toronto. The city that didn't grab her. The franchise that hasn't had the chance to get it wrong yet. There are 2 versions of the Indiana Fever right now. There's the version that stood at a groundbreaking and promised to set a new standard. And there's the version that showed up on camera on a Tuesday night in May and grabbed its own future by the arm. The Fever have to decide which version is real, because the city of Indianapolis already picked a side. And right now, standing on that podium with 350,000 people watching and 100 million more at home, so has Caitlin Clark. The only question left, the one that's going to define this franchise for the next decade, is whether the Indiana Fever are willing to hold on to her, or whether they're going to keep proving, one Tuesday night at a time, that they never really understood what they had.